Hello, and welcome to the UMSI roast of Dean Thomas A. Finholt. Sorry, I'm told this is an Ask Me Anything with Dean Thomas A. Finholt. My name is Cliff Lampe. I'm a professor here at the School of Information. I'm also an alum, having been here for my MSI and PhD. And today we're going to be talking about a whole set of issues. But first, Tom, I think you're just going to do a brief introduction of yourself as Dean, your overall career, and just any kind of opening statement that you have.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, especially with you, Cliff. I'm the Dean of the School of Information. Deans are the Chief Executive Officer of academic units at the University of Michigan. How did I get here? I went to college at Swarthmore College, was a history major. I went to Carnegie Mellon University, got a PhD in what they call social and decision science. I came here originally, I was in the College of Literature, Science, and Arts in the psychology department, and then when the school was reformulated in the mid-90s, I moved my appointment over here. 2006, I became Associate Dean for Research. 2015, I was appointed Interim Dean. In 2016, I got the crown for good. So there's my whole story, and I feel like I sometimes have to say that Stephanie Teasley is my wife. She's also on the faculty, and I have two children, one of whom goes to Kalamazoo College, Cliff and Stephanie's alma mater, and the other one just started at Carleton. I have a miniature schnauzer, Loki, the super wonder dog.
Loki, if you don't know, is the god of mischief in Norse mythology.
That's right.
All right. So should we break right into the
On that
questions?
note, let's go for it.
What is the mission of the School of Information? How do you see it, and then how do you describe it to other people?
Yeah, so the mission of the School of Information is to help people use information with technology to make a better world. And we enact that vision every day in the classroom, in the laboratory, in the field, and in acts and deeds that we and our students and our alumni commit on behalf of others. It definitely reflects our deep tradition here of 96 years, our roots in originally the Department of Library Science and ultimately the School of Library Science and ultimately the School of Information. The library profession is well known for its commitment to social justice, free access to information, the right to read as a fundamental tenet of functioning democracy. Those are all things that we believe and incorporate in our DNA. The expression of them is different now than it would have been in, say, 1929. Now we might be more concerned in the domain of social media, misinformation, bullying, and so forth than the concerns that would have occupied our predecessors. But I think the overall drift is exactly the same. People often ask me, how do we differ from a computer science department? I would say a big difference is our commitment to doing good on behalf of others. Not that our colleagues in computer science are a bunch of soulless, not engaged, but that's really upfront for us. It distinguishes us from the business school to a certain extent, I think it's steered us well. It's a good guide star for us.
Awesome, thank you. So besides working with me, what do you like best about being Dean?
Yeah, so that's always true. I always love being with Cliff. Being Dean at the University of Michigan is one of the best jobs in the world because deans here have a special role relative to their place in other institutions. We're a very strong dean institution. Deans here have a lot of discretion over resources, how they're going to spend them, initiatives that they're going to launch, strategic directions they're going to pursue, and so forth. So, clearly one of the things that makes this job great is we can decide on the things that we're going to go after and mobilize the awesome talent we have in the faculty, amongst the students and staff, to go out and do them. Obviously, the launch of the online degree this fall is one example of that. But the other parts of the job that are great, I actually enjoy the ceremonial functions. So the participating at the university level and at the school level, convocation, commencement, being with the other deans, celebrating this centuries-long tradition of scholarship and community. I love going out on the road and meeting our alums and seeing what they're up to. There's order of 9,000 of them now. I don't see all of them every year, but that's very interesting. And then I think a kind of a underappreciated aspect of being a dean here is we are actually part of the leadership cabinet of the university. So I have a responsibility to the faculty here, the students here, the staff here, and our alumni, but I also work for the provost and help him out with challenges that face the entire university in recent history. That's been, the possibility that Richard Spencer might show up on campus. Increasingly in the future, we'll be dealing with some of our budget issues as this period of unending growth through the out-of-state differential goes away.
And this does feel like a period of challenge and opportunity for universities, public universities more broadly, and us as a school in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the luxury that our predecessors had was that higher education was accepted as a good, as a public good. That was a given. And I think today that's something that is probably for worse challenged. And we need to do a better job of communicating what our contributions are back to the state, to the country, to the world. I have no problem making that case. It's a great case, but it is one that we cannot shirk from. As you were just down in Washington lobbying on behalf of computer scientists and information scientists.
It was a great time. All right, so this is from our audience of tens of thousands. What's the best advice you can give a new student like me, BSI, to be successful at UMSI?
So I think the key to success for the undergrads is to have a deep intellectual curiosity, is to always be wondering how things work, why are things arranged the way that they are. Hopefully that leads to impulse to question the status quo occasionally and to oppose the status quo when necessary. So that I think would be the first requisite. I think the second requisite is the ability to be a good listener, an appreciative listener, to actually hear what other people are saying and respond to that with active listening skills. And then I think the third thing is to have a strong ethical and moral compass to understand when a particular implementation might be in the best interest of the people and when it's not. Mark Zuckerberg.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. I'm sure he had a lot of ethics courses at Harvard. And then the last thing would be to develop those requisite technical and methodological skills that allow you to engage your professional direction with mastery. Is to be really good at some set of things. You can still learn more once you get out of here, like taking our MOOCs and whatever, but you should leave with that set of super annealed skills that will be very valuable to a prospective employer, to prospective colleagues.
Okay. So our new degree program, the Masters of Applied Data Science, just launched. And we have a question about that. It says here that MADS is highly dependent on online tools. What are your plans to develop app experts, create plans to improve apps over time, and create training modules to communicate usage and best known methods?
Yeah, so the way I'm going to interpret that question is to say, is there a plan to decompose the elements of the MADS degree into, say, more digestible chunks or smaller bits? And I would say yes. The first cut of that would be probably in a more incremental form of specializations and MOOCs, but it's definitely something that we think about all the time, is how do you realize more advantage for the investment that we've already made, and always with an eye toward reaching those audiences that we will never reach in our residential programs in Ann Arbor.
Okay. Do you have an update on any of our centers, CSMR, the Center for Social Media Responsibility, or ESC, Ethics, Society, and Computing?
So the Center for Social Media Responsibility, we started about 18 or 19 months ago. That was an initiative that I announced an intent for when I was a candidate to be dean. The Provost's office gave us some startup funds. Notably, Garland Gilchrist was our first executive director, but Governor Whitmer had other ideas for him. But since then, Paul Resnick has stepped into the director role. We've hired an associate director. They've released the first version of the IFI quotient, which is an automated index of the circulation of unreliable URLs on social media platforms. There's been a second release of the IFI quotient. There's a new measure coming probably later this year that is an index of the character of the discourse in, say, a subreddit or something like that. And the goal is to have these be fairly robust and visible with a long longitudinal trace leading into the election cycle when we expect there to be a lot of interest and activity around these things. Of course, the faculty affiliated with the center continue to do interesting things. You know, you and your colleagues just got some great awards. Eric Gilbert has done work on identifying trolls. Libby Hempel just tweeted that she got a paper accepted to ICWSM on content of political tweets and so forth. Those are all of a kind. The ESC Center is a more recent development that's led by Christian Sandvig. They are more typically aligned with the digital studies group on campus. They are the ones taking up the charge around some of the other questions that concern us, algorithmic bias, ethics, the fundamental design of these large social media systems, some of the unintended consequences. I think they have a more humanistic pitch than the Center for Social Media Responsibility does. But both of them I would expect to be engaged in the technical side of the issues, and both are poised to generate quite a bit of traditional media attention.
Yeah, I was really happy when we were in Washington that Senator Peters' office knew quite a bit about what CSMR was doing, and they actually knew the IFI quotient. And so it's having, I think that's a measure of impact that policymakers know about that.
It always helps to be written up in the Post for
It
those
does.
Washington guys.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so question here, obviously from somebody from the ESC group, Python or Java?
Ha! Well, I'm really old school, so I learned to program in APL.
Not Perl, Tom? You don't
No,
like
sorry. Yeah, to be honest, I've only really dabbled with both of those, but I suppose since a lot of our instruction is anchored on Python, I should say Python. And Dr. Chuck's, Python course is one of the most famous. So,
if you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend. What is some of the research that you're really excited about coming out of UMSI right now?
That's like picking your favorite child, right?
It is.
But
which is your favorite child?
yeah,
by the way?
right. And then all the other faculty will run away saying, "How come you said Anders and not Carson?" Right? So they might be watching. So Anders and Carson. Let's just talk about some recent notable successes and not place surveillance on it. So.
Right.
So Elaine Cohn's study published in Science on trust measured worldwide by dropping these lost wallets and seeing which ones returned was a incredibly clever experimental design. The audacity to deploy at the level of 40,000 wallets in I don't know even how many countries it was, dozens of countries is mind-blowing to me, and has paid off in a hugely significant work. That I think is worthy of quite a bit of attention. I spent a lot of time looking at Sylvia Lintner's work, especially trying to understand the role of these maker spaces in economic development and mobility. I really appreciate the way she and her colleagues are trying to punch through some of the myths and metaphors surrounding Silicon Valley and that model of economic development. I'm very interested in the work that Lionel Robert has been doing on mobility and human-robot interaction. And when I'm on the road, I talk a lot about things that Tawana Dillahunt and Kentaro Toyama have been doing in Detroit, especially the work that Tawana's been doing looking at economic mobility issues around resume writing and trying to match expertise with need in terms of people that are job seeking and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, those are ones that I listed. Doesn't mean I think
It's
those
a
are
rich
the best.
field to choose from, right?
Yeah, we could go on for hours.
Let's do. No, just kidding. Let's go on to the next one. So the next one that our team has highlighted for me to ask you is, do you watch Black Mirror, which I assume is television? I don't watch television, of course, myself. Or if not, what do you binge watch?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of Black Mirror. I was in Spain when Bandersnatch dropped.
How can you actually be an information professional and not watch Black Mirror,
know.
right? Like
I know. It's
come on.
You'd probably get kicked out of the club. So yeah, I was in Spain visiting my older son. It was a very high priority for us to get the Wi-Fi to work in the Airbnb so we could watch the Bandersnatch episode. My wife does not watch Black Mirror so much and definitely didn't get the whole appeal of the Bandersnatch episode. So we were shouting and screaming, especially on a kind of a iffy internet connection. You make your choice about which way you're going to go. But yeah, so binge watching. What have I watched recently? I'm watching Taboo right now, which is a Tom Hardy show set in 1814 in the UK. Involves intrigue between the East India Company and the Americans and the Crown. A little bit brutal, kind of dark, but it draws you in. I like The Americans a lot. What was that that weird superhero, The Boys on Amazon?
Oh yeah,
It's kind of a superhero take.
It's an old Garth Ennis comic that they've adapted for the television.
Oh, is it Garth Ennis? Okay, yeah. So those are some recent ones, and occasionally America's Got Talent is watched in my household. I don't know by who.
It's a Detroit Youth Choir. How could you?
Yeah, how can you not watch it? Right, it's a patriotic thing.
Right. Great. Well, one of the things that I like, one of these questions I really like is, SI has changed over the past years, and you and I were here and remember when user experience was a new thing, and we were trying to sell that story, and data science then came along and was kind of a new thing. What do you see as kind of new topic areas? I know you tend to go to the faculty and like faculty to lead where should we grow in terms of topic domains that we study here at the School of Information. But what are some of the areas that you've been thinking about, that you've heard from faculty that you think would be exciting spots for us to grow in?
Well, so one direction that we're definitely moving is what I would call computational social science. So it would be work that Daniel Romero is doing, Sharon Budek, Misha Teplitsky is in that domain. These are efforts to use sophisticated computational techniques to address questions of social interests. And the reason that's exciting is that we are in an era where, it's like when we were coming up, you would address questions that scale through inferential statistics because you'd sample, like when you worked at ISR, you would sample and then you would draw inference from your sample. We're in an era now where you can just go straight to population level measurement of all kinds of things. Whether it's
such a different epistemological approach, those two methods, that I think we're still getting our arms around it.
Yeah, and I think we're assembling a core of faculty here at the School of Information that will certainly lead the university and lead the world in thinking about what the opportunities are in that kind of space. I'm very excited about the work we do in information technology for development. I think that's a rich area leading to both important research opportunities and important pedagogical opportunities. I visited the GEEP students in Cape Town this summer. That program has been in India in the past. We're I think going to move it around in the future. So I think that's a really interesting domain for us. And our traditional interests haven't waned. I mean, UX is still a problem, kind of an open question. Data science had plenty to work on. The incentive-centered design, behavioral economists, plenty to do. So, and then our historic strength in archives and records management and in library science, that stuff rolls along. We've hired a lot of really exciting new people in the archives and library domain. I'm very excited to see what they're going to bring to the school. Ricky Punzelin, and one of our alums, is coming back to join us, so
Yep.
it will be awesome.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like there's a lot of questions about the building coming up, and UMSI is in a space crunch. My office is actually now booth 43 at B-Dubs if you need to find me. So feel free to come see me anytime. First 6 wings are on me. Can you update us on the new building? There's lots of these questions, what's it going to be like? What it'll enable us to do? How's it going to affect students?
Yeah.
How it will affect instruction? So maybe just a couple riff minutes on that.
Yeah, so in talking about the building, we have to be a little bit careful because we don't want to preempt the prerogative of the regents who, after all, approve designs and will let contracts and so forth. So I'm only going to speak within the parameters of what is publicly known about the building. Those facts are, it's in a public act, so it's a $150 million project. It will be built as an addition to the Bob and Betty Beister building on the North Campus. It will jointly house all of the School of Information, and it will house some part of computer science and engineering from the College of Engineering. We expect that if all goes well, the ground would break in third quarter of 2021, and we would expect to take occupancy in third quarter of 2023. So those are kind of things that we know for the most part. Why have we sought a new building, and why on North Campus? So the new building is to address some deficiencies of, while this is a lovely space in North Quad, we knew it was too small for us when we moved in, and we've only grown since we got here. Right now we're running 4 satellite sites in addition to the North Quad location, and that geographic dispersion is very disruptive to sense of community, to operations, and so forth. So getting under one roof is a high priority. I think being on the North Campus is a huge benefit for us. It's an exciting group of schools up there. We have quite a bit of overlap with engineering right now, quite a bit of overlap with stamps, overlap with music, theater, and dance. Sheila is appointed jointly between us and them, and you and Lionel have had projects with architecture. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really exciting. I think the North Campus is going to become really the design campus of the University of Michigan. If the connector is built, the mythical monorail, transit time from north to central will be order of 3 minutes. So many of the complaints about the Arctic wastes of North Campus will go away because you can zip right down to all the amenities here on the central campus. I think it'll be great for us to build a building from scratch and design in the features that we want for our workspace. This building went through 2 iterations. There was the building that we wanted, and then there was the one that we got. We got the nice courtyard, but we lost a good chunk of our assignable square feet. So I think that's going to be exciting, and North Campus will see a lot of student housing development in the next decade. I think there's going to be retail on campus up there that will make it livelier. I can't make any promises about that, but it's an exciting project. It shows a lot of confidence on the part of the university and the state, because remember, the state is an important stakeholder here in us and in our mission, and we're not going away. We got a new building, we're not going away.
That's right. Change of direction for a question. What would you have done if you weren't a dean or an academic?
Well, I'm a sailor, so I don't do very much of that these
piracy.
days. Yeah, I would have been a pirate.
Gotcha.
Exactly. Outdoor stuff. I camped and hiked a lot when I was younger. Haven't done as much of that recently. So could I have been at the National Outdoor Leadership School, teaching people how to make igloos, maybe something like that, up in the Boundary Waters. Getting lost. Every time I've been in the Boundary Waters, I've got lost. It's actually very instructive. So
probably the dean thing's a good.
Yeah, it's a good practice. Yeah.
Great. Going back to this is advice that I'm sure you'll feel very comfortable giving. What's your advice for someone who wants to begin learning coding with no prior knowledge or experience?
Yes, so I think taking Dr. Chuck's course is a good start. I don't think you're going to graduate out of that with full mastery, but it's definitely it's a pretty enjoyable way of diving in compared to the way, I had to learn how to code, which was on punch cards. Back in the day. I mean, if you dropped that box of cards, that was a bad afternoon. Or tape. Did you ever have those?
I had tape, yeah. TRS-80.
Yep. Yeah.
The punch cards, by the name, were named Hollerith cards after the founder of IBM.
That's right. That historical treat, completely free.
That historical treat brought to you by B-Dubs.
Booth 6.
That's right. Anything else that you would recommend to people? I always like to tell people you also need to find a project you care about. Like what's a fun thing for you to work on?
But writing Hello World code is pretty tedious.
Yeah.
So, I remember one of my first coding projects was figuring out how many sheets of paper it would take to build a stack that would reach the moon. And then we moved on from that to writing games. I think we wrote a lunar lander game, so you had to know the physics of the body in motion, and then the descent engine and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Those were exciting days.
Yes, coding euchre.
You'd watch the little, descender go down. The little cue would move across the screen.
Oh yeah.
Or if you're really cool, you had a vector display.
Yeah,
like that tank. Anyway.
So anyway, take Dr. Chuck's class. All right. So someone asked, I heard there's a sports analytics certificate. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so kinesiology is leading development of a certificate. It has Stefan Szymanski, who's the world's expert on economics of football, not the American football, but the one the rest of the world plays, which means he has a massive readership. Pete Bodery is going to be doing some stuff on wearables and measurement of athletic performance, and then our contribution are some of the modules from the existing AdSwappy specialization. So you'll swap out the fruits and vegetable example for the Premier League in India, the cricket teams and that kind of thing. So that launched January, I think.
Right.
And remember, if you are a Michigan student, staff, faculty, or alum, you can take all of our online specialization and MOOC content absolutely free through Michigan Online, which is a huge, huge benefit that I'm promoting everywhere I go. You can't take our degree for free, so the degree is always going to cost you, but the so like Dr. Chuck's course we were just talking about, free to you if you're an alum, staff, faculty.
Yeah, that's great.
Go for it.
Another question we have from the audience of millions. Do you have any advice on how to get accepted as a research assistant at UMSI?
Well, let's go back to the intellectual curiosity. It's good to, if you're going to go approach a faculty member, you should go look at their recent work so that you can come into that office and say, so, Cliff, tell me about, online harassment or whatever you're up to these days, right?
I don't know.
Social capital and Facebook.
That's right.
Right? Go to a greatest hit. And then, you gotta demonstrate some grit. So, typically a faculty member may give you something to do to see if you come back. I remember an undergrad came to me once and said that he wanted to do some research with me, and I handed him the NSF proposal guide, and I said, here's a kind of a guide to how to do a proposal. Why don't you go off and write down what you want to do, figuring I'm never going to see that kid again. And then he came back a week later with this full, proofed out 15-page proposal. He's an academic now.
I bet.
Yeah. So I think that's always important. And then showing up is really important. I think hanging around the periphery, engaged in legitimate peripheral participation is a way to get in. Go to the academic talks, because that's where the faculty congregate. Ask a question. That's always a good way to be visible. Schedule time with our visitors. We have a pantheon of experts in all of the fields covered by the school coming through here every year. We always book time for them to meet with students. It's a great opportunity to make connections, build your network. Those are the things I would recommend. Sometimes you're going to have to do some things that aren't compensated. Or you might get course credit for them, that kind of a thing. I think a lot of people go into it looking for a job, and I think it really has to be more of a passion, and then it becomes a job along the way.
Great. So another question we have from our audience. This year we hired a ton of new faculty. It's a big surge year for us in terms of number of new faculty that we have. Anything about their research areas or research projects that you feel like people should know about as you talk to the community?
Well, I mean, you can look at all of them. So they're all awesome. We brought in Mike Landai as a presidential postdoc. She studies how people use the internet in what I would call infrastructure limited settings. She's focused specifically on Cuba with some interesting observations about how they get around bandwidth constraint. Misha Teplitsky is really looking at a kind of scientific discovery and the organization of innovation through a computational social science lens. Abigail Jacobs has been looking at the opioid epidemic using prescription data from the state of Massachusetts. Ricky Punzlin's been engaged in helping collections work with indigenous communities to, talk about these artifacts in diaspora and trying to create digital means of unifying them on behalf of the indigenous communities. Irene Pasquetto is going to join us next year, has been looking at scientists' use of data. Parmveer Dhillon is a machine learning guy, has been looking at patterns like in comment fields and things like that, I think at the Boston Globe, right?
Yes,
and
that's right.
Stuff like that. So did I cover everybody there?
Naz and Oliver.
Oh, right, because Naz and Oliver are already here. So.
Which means they were here as postdocs with their lines just converted to tenure stream faculty.
Yeah,
For our student observers, I can explain what that means later.
Yeah, so Oliver brings this perspective on how social media, what role social media plays for individuals going through identity transitions, looking at both supportive and antagonistic aspects of that support, and Naz has looked at, I would describe it as how people express very deeply personal events such as pregnancy loss or miscarriage, and again, what the role of social support, presence or absence of in these social media contexts.
It's a really strong group. It's exciting for us as a school to have this many new faculty all at once, all doing such great and diverse things.
I mean, most high schools would be happy just to have those people as their faculty, and those are our new faculty. So
it's crazy.
We are awesome.
Well, that gets into another question, what makes us awesome? What makes UMSI's master's program different from other master's programs in information science?
I think part of the answer to that is a sort of historical antecedent, is that we were a program that had a very specific interest in behavioral aspects of these questions, certainly embodied in the careers of Gary and Judy Olson, to a lesser extent Michael Cohen and so forth. And I think that still sets us apart, as we have a more grounded interest in things like user experience and user interaction than would say be the case at other places. The 588 course and the 488 course and the master's in undergrad curriculum respectively reflect that. I think where we have the advantage over some of our competitors is we are an outstanding school embedded in an outstanding public institution, with whether there's 93 programs rated in the top 10 across campus, which means if you need to find a political scientist, an economist, an anthropologist, an art historian, there are MacArthur winners, Pulitzer Prize winners, an awesome array of guests and visitors. We could build a whole PhD curriculum around the lecture series on this campus, like ICOST, for example, to put one plug in. So I think that differentiates us. And then I think the third thing that differentiates us is that we did not abandon our library tradition when we were formed. So Berkeley basically got out of that business altogether, and some schools. I mean, it's a choice, not a choice we made. Some schools never had that, like Penn State and Irvine, and I think that gives us that is part of our special DNA that differentiates us.
I agree. All right, back to kind of a more fun question as a palate cleanser. Do you have a favorite memory as a college undergrad? Or we could darken that up. What's the worst thing you've ever done, Tom?
Yeah.
Let's go with the favorite memory. That's
Well, we'll go
nicer.
with the favorite memory. That's always a safer route. So my senior year was a year of the NFL strike, and the sports writers for the Philadelphia Inquirer were desperate for content. And it just so happened that that coincided with the 1 year that Swarthmore College actually had a winning record in football. And so you can see the juxtaposition these guys were trying to play is like, oh, look at all the weird freaks at Swarthmore, but they're good at football. Like that could not, those two things can't coexist and whatever.
Typically not.
And, you know, in a sports writer way, they came up with a number of interesting characterizations of the campus, which of course were completely wrong. So I, along with one of my professors, we wrote a letter to the Inquirer, just kind of countering some of their stereotypes, which became a little running engagement between us and these sports writers, and you know, famous for 5 minutes on the Philly Inquirer sports page because there's no Eagles. So.
Right. That sounds fun. Here's a question I think we want to get to at some point. What is UMSI doing to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in positions of leadership at UMSI, i.e. faculty or support leadership?
Yeah, so yeah, obviously we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. Many of the things in that plan discuss or talk to the composition of our staff and faculty. The leadership question is tricky because you've got to get people to a certain level in the academic hierarchy before they're really eligible to be considered for some of these significant roles. So the way I've approached that is to say we've got to recruit more underrepresented faculty, which we have done specifically through the presidential postdoc mechanism. And then we've got to move them through the promotion ladder, get them to tenure, and then we've got to retain them.
Right.
So those are the things that we're focused on right now.
Yep.
And my assumption, and while similarly promoting them for the intermediate leadership activities that set people up for later success or later opportunities, but not overwhelming them pre-tenure so that they can't succeed at the tenure game. So I know that may seem like a kind of a feckless answer, but I think the takeaway there is you are playing for the long game. Mm-hmm. We're addressing that through faculty and staff recruitment. We've seen real and important gains in the faculty, particularly through the president's postdoc, and then more important, retaining those individuals when they have reached, when they have passed up through the promotion rung.
That's right. And helping make sure they get through the promotion rungs and giving them the support they need, all of that's absolutely. I think most organizations are struggling with that kind of cycle of leadership over time.
Well, they can't even seed the field to begin with.
Right.
And I think that's where we've had some pretty signature success in terms of the faculty hiring. You know, we have university level leadership programs that we nominate people for all the time. Mm-hmm. Believe me, we're pushing the nominations out there, but it's a very competitive field at the university right. level, and sometimes it takes a few years for those people to get their shot. But yeah, that is definitely, we talk about that particularly in terms of succession. So the school is going through an important demographic shift as the boomers and ultimately the Gen Xers step off the stage. It'll be the millennials and the Gen Zs that mm-hmm. will step up, and we want to make sure that cohort of faculty are prepared for these leadership roles when they come.
That's right. It is a long game.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the MADS program. A question here is: do you see MADS expanding to be more than just online? Do you see a residential component to MADS?
So MADS was deliberately conceived to be orthogonal to the residential program, and the concern there was we didn't want to develop anything that would cannibalize the interest in the residential degree, which we still feel is a very important educational experience. So I think that firm distinction will remain in place for some time. I could see elaboration to more online activities, and I could see at some point more crossover between online resources and residential resources. The form of that would be the so-called hybrid degrees, where you do some component of the degree in the online setting, and then you come and are in residence to complete the degree.
Similar to an executive education program that B schools run, right?
Yeah, and we actually had such a degree for a while that we were offering with edX, but the mechanics were not well articulated, and some people have had success with it. I think we will return to that eventually, but I don't see a residential parallel to the MADS program anytime soon.
Great. Well, another question that we've gotten is, what are some essential skills that a data analyst or coder needs to be successful in their career?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about this earlier. You got to have curiosity. I think you got to have the ethical and moral compass, ability to be a conscientious and active listener, and then probably what's going to be more dominant in this case will be that arsenal of technical chops. And there, I think the more significant thing is, a lot of times students get very preoccupied with the specific skill that they want to have when they graduate, because that's what employers want. And what we try to inculcate and train is the ability to learn those new skills that will be required 5 to 10 years down the road. And so, that's really kind of learning to learn, much more so than being facile in a specific language, system, application.
I mean, across all of our academic programs, I think that's our constant tension, right? Is what's our mix between, definite kind of skills like R or Tableau or whatever it happens to be that students have a lot of hunger for, versus these kind of more amorphous theoretical things that we think help them further down the road but don't feel as immediately rewarding. So that's a constant balance.
Right, and there's a lot of tension there because employers are coming in and saying, can you do Tableau, can you do SQL, et cetera, et cetera. And in 10 years from now, they'll be asking for something completely different. And the hope is that our students are in a position to continue to thrive because they can retrain themselves, or they come back and do Michigan Online and benefit from the great portfolio of course offerings that way. To reimagine their careers.
Yeah. All right, another question that came up is, what's your favorite spot in Ann Arbor? Favorite campus chill spot?
So my favorite spot in Ann Arbor is Water Hill, because it is the one place that has elevation in town, and when you look back from Water Hill toward campus, you can see the downtown and then the buildings of the University of Michigan. I think that park is a great place to go. You can actually do things there, so there's fields where you can play ultimate or football or softball or whatever, but there's also a nice grove of trees up there, and most people who come here never get to Water Hill, I think, and don't understand its significance. It was a historic African American community in Ann Arbor. It's been gentrified to a certain extent, but there are still, it still has vestiges of that.
It was even redlined historically, right? Like back in the day.
Right.
So
the banks wouldn't lend there and that kind of a thing. So I like Water Hill. Chill place on campus. I like the reflecting.
Don't tell them, they'll go there.
Yeah, we'll ruin it, right? It'll be a success disaster. I like the reflecting pool on North Campus below the Lurie Engineering Center. Down here on Central, I like the Cube. It's completely under construction at the moment.
It is.
I like the Diag on a fall afternoon, not so much on a winter day, but on a fall afternoon with the sun coming down through the trees and your squirrel friends and that guy who plays the harmonica over there.
Yep. Maybe a street preacher or two,
Yeah, yesterday there was a street preacher out there. Listened to him for a few minutes.
They work hard.
Not sure it took, but.
So one of the things that we've had a question about, maybe you can just reflect on, what do you see as kind of the history of our programs around academic librarianship as a career path and the future of this? How does this fit in moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the history is we were a library school, and so I always think there's a certain kind of bittersweet yearning on behalf of some of our older alumni for a time when the story of the school was much simpler to tell,
Yes.
and focused specifically on one institution and one a very prescribed set of activities within that institution. And we aren't that school anymore. And to be honest, some of our alumni struggle with that transition, but most now embrace it. Doesn't mean that we've abandoned librarianship as a career path or as a focus for instruction. Just means that now takes a place alongside many other interesting things that people might do. And I should also say that there's a fair placement into librarian positions from some of our other tracks. So UX people work in lights. Talked with a guy last night at the MADS reception who was a UX graduate of the MSI, but he's working in the Heartland Public Library, for example. So there are those kinds of stories. We are not the producer of future directors of university libraries the way we would have been through the bulk of our history. I wouldn't preclude the possibility that we will never produce another university librarian, but I don't think that's our predominant mission anymore. We definitely place people into academic library positions, and they thrive in them. Preparation within the program, I think, comes in the form of our management course, which was retooled to encompass a host of potential occupational directions. I think a lot of the methodology that we introduce is apropos, no matter what you go off to do. Right. But we aren't an exclusive library school anymore, and so compared to some of our competitors who are more so, sometimes it looks like that thread is muted or a little bit lost. The way I would describe it is richer.
Yeah.
So it's not lost, but it now there's an accompaniment
more
there.
More friends.
Yeah, definitely more allies.
Well, that being said, come see us at the Michigan Library Association in 3 weeks. We'll have a booth, and I'd love to talk to you. You mentioned kind of the MADS to LIS and UX connection a few seconds ago. One of the questions that we've had actually is, will there be a way for students who are in the MADS program to then transition to the residential program, or what do you see as the connection between some of those programs?
Yeah, so like I said before, right now there's pretty specific firewalls precluding that, but I would see a time in the future when there may be a more stackable organization of our specialization offerings so that you could accumulate them and then come and do some amount of on-campus work and get our full-on, say, MSI or MHI or something along those lines. And it's plausible at some point there's some MADS-like thing that would have a residential element that could be more boot camp-like, for example.
So when you see that these online courses as being a way for people to refresh their skills going on. We have a question about, since data science, AI is constantly growing, that's true for UX as well, will SI offer its alums a way to enroll back into its future program and take those future courses? But it sounds like that's part of what you see these online offerings as doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I believe with respect to MADS that we will ultimately expose that degree content, outside the walls of the degree through a specialization. Mm-hmm. It won't be as deep as the degree. It won't be the same kind of intense interaction with the instructional staff and with the other support staff that you get as a degree recipient. But it will have many of the same content characteristics, okay. And that would certainly be a way. And of course, Michigan people would get that for free. Other people might pay the fee to sit for the certificate exam and that kind of a thing. The hybrid degree is another pathway that we've explored there. Another avenue would be 3+2 or 4+1 in the undergrad.
Are the firewalls such that if I'm enrolled in like the Mass MSI, can I take MADS credits to fill out my MSI requirements?
Right now you cannot do that.
Right.
And it would be plausible in the future that we would articulate some form of that, but we have plenty to do right now just to get MADS launched and rolling.
It's been a lot of work, and thanks to all of our staff who've worked so hard on that. A couple BSI questions that have come up. So is it true that the social media concentration is not being offered here anymore?
In the BSI? I don't think that's true, is it?
It's not true.
Yeah. No,
It's being changed as a focus area, and then we're adding also additional focus areas for people to take kind of topic expertise classes.
Yeah, I think there's also been discussion at various points about articulating that one in particular as a minor that would have a broad appeal across campus. I think there's a bottleneck right now around approval of minors because LSA Executive Committee said they didn't want any more minors.
That's right.
And until they open up the floodgates again, we're all kind of stymied. But
So join my letter writing campaign. What do you see as the future of the BSI more broadly? And undergrad for us is relatively new, if you don't know in the audience. It's only 5 years old-ish, our undergrad
yeah, I think we'll
program.
graduate our 5th cohort this
Right.
spring. So the future is bright. There are some peculiar structural features of the BSI that are rate limiting. It's a junior-senior degree. Right now, we predominantly recruit cross campus. The provost office puts a cap on us. We can't have more than a specific number of individuals matriculating through that cross campus mechanism, which has to do with a lot of inside baseball surrounding, tuition attribution, and the incumbent unit is LSA. In this case, we don't want to start a bunch of programs that bankrupt LSA, for example. Sometimes people ask me, will it ever be a freshman admit program? I don't think it ever will be a freshman admit program. I would, it's always difficult to speculate, but I would say it's unlikely that the university will ever approve another freshman admit program. I bet we're done with freshman admit, but we'll see.
We will see, everybody. We will see.
Yeah, I mean, I have told the provost office that the parent phone calls are going to go directly to them when they start to come in,
Right.
and that is a measure of the increasing demand. Is we start to see people who are perturbed that they don't get admitted, even though they think, I'm at the University of Michigan, I should be able to take a course of study that I'm really interested in, but that we're required to impose some necessary and somewhat arbitrary cutoffs. We don't experience any of those limits in the domain of external transfer, and we've had a very successful program there under Devin Keene's leadership and recruitment. I would expect to see that continue to grow. I'd like to see that reach out to students and give people in growing parts of the country like Florida and the Southwest the opportunity to come and study here with us their junior and senior year and that kind of a thing. So
Interesting.
So I mean, I think the bottom line there is BSI is probably on the order of as big as it's ever going to be right now, which is about 300 students, give or take, maybe 250 or so who are cross campus, and then you're filling in. How big it gets is really going to be a function of recruiting on the external side.
Right. Do you think robots will replace professors?
So when I started at Carnegie Mellon in 1984, the then president, Dick Cyert, got up and gave a speech where he predicted that in the near future, people would be able to matriculate in 3 years at Carnegie Mellon University because they would have, he didn't say robots, but they would have expert systems or AI instructing them. Yeah, I don't see robots replacing professors in terms of that kind of day-to-day interaction and mentorship and guidance and so forth. I think it is already the case that we have AI that can do some of the things that we have historically, associated uniquely with the professor role, like grading. I think we will see a time when, which is good news for the faculty in some sense,
Sure,
and then maybe not for the GEO, but where we will see more of that work evaluated, algorithmically or through AI. I don't really think there's a replacement for the human-to-human interaction. I'm not as concerned with whether that's mediated or not. I don't think anything's passed the Turing test yet. So,
Right. So stop running the Turing test on Paul Resnick, whoever asked that question. Another question we have from the audience. They're really interested in AR and VR research. Can they do that at UMSI?
Yes, they can. So Michael Nabling, one of our recent faculty hires, has pioneered 2 course offerings in the master's curriculum Those are a component of a graduate studies certificate at Rackham in AR, VR, MR, which we are now calling XR. And if you read the budget notes that the provost gave the regents recently, you would see that he has allocated a substantial new sum of one-time money to the now Center for Academic Innovation to take on an XR initiative, which will be, order of 4 to 5 staff supporting RFP to faculty, who would then have those staff as a production group to generate 13 weeks of course content that would be fully XR. So you can imagine a humanities course where you're constantly in the ancient city of study and exploring its byways and alleys and that kind of stuff. Or in material science, you're actually inside the molecule, looking at the binding sites and kind of the three-dimensional structures and that kind of thing.
You have a M-cubed with a couple people at the business school looking at stuff like that. So it's an active area and it's growing within the university. Consoles or computers for video games?
So we have both in my household. I'm not the principal user of them. We have a lot of consoles. We have an aging Xbox. We think we have a Wii U and whatever the new Nintendo gadget is.
Switch.
The Switch, there you go. Obviously, I use that one a lot. We have a pretty souped up game, with the mega graphics board and liquid cooled and that kind of stuff. That one mostly was being used to play Overwatch, as far as I could tell.
Right.
But other popular hits in the household, there was an indie game, Papers, Please, which is kind of an interaction with a faceless bureaucrat at the border, kind of thing, a little bit detective story. Fortnite never caught on, but those battle royale games, not terribly popular. Call of Duty, I think it's on the shelves. I'm not sure. That one gets a lot of playtime. World of Warcraft, never a big thing, at least in my household. And then, for the app games, not Angry Birds or anything like that. There was one that we were never able to solve. It was called
Words with Friends?
Yeah, of course, Words with Friends. Yeah, right. No, this one is...
Did you get kicked off a plane like Alec Baldwin for not finishing your game?
Yeah, that was me, exactly. When I've caught people playing Words with Friends in class and actually helped them find a better word to play. But
yeah.
Now this game that I can't solve is Device 6. So it's got kind of a wicked logic. And then Monument Valley I really like, which is not a console or a computer game. It's right here on the phone.
Plus board games are the new hotness, everybody. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride, I like that one.
D&D's recent reemergence,
Yeah.
just going to say.
My wife doesn't like us to play Settlers. Gets to be a little bit too heated.
Gotcha.
But
Question from the audience here. Are there any seminars and or open house events that non-University of Michigan people can attend?
well, all of our talks are public and publicized. Like
we're not checking ID at the door for anything.
No, definitely not. And there's no magnetometers yet. So any of our signature events like John Seeley Brown or the Bishop Lecture or whatever, or the Bicentennial event a few years ago, those are all promoted to the public, and we welcome the public participation. The public is not invited to come and sit in class. So that, typically that's not okay. I think that if they wanted to come to Miss Talks and so forth, that would not be disallowed. I'm not sure where we'd be.
And you're welcome to visit a class often, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. You can come in and check things out, especially if you're a prospective student. But yeah, I'd say any of our advertised events are open to the public. And I think I counted one in a typical day. There's like 70 to 80 such events on campus.
So will UMSI and the College of Engineering work together to combine their course offerings in the future?
I mean, co-location will produce a number of benefits and synergies. I expect the early synergies to be more in the domain of research and faculty and staff level collaboration. I think cross-listing is a later aspiration because the bureaucratic hurdles are huge. So CS has a very specific prerequisite hierarchy. They have a lot of demand for those courses. It's a little bit difficult to imagine them expanding access to those in the near term. So I think cross-listing at the level of doctoral courses and master's courses is a near-term probability. I think undergraduate is going to be more of a work in progress.
Great. Question here, what is your favorite sport to play and or to watch? I assume dressage for your own
Of
personal...
course, dressage, yes, my stable of ponies. But,
That's right.
Well, I'm pretty Catholic in my sporting tastes. I share a season ticket to Michigan hockey, so I like college hockey in particular. I usually get a partial season ticket for Michigan basketball. I like basketball a lot. I go to football games quite a bit because that's part of the job. I mean, all things equal, I suppose I would prefer.
I was a football fan till last week. Yeah.
Yeah, things change quickly, don't they? Yeah. It's early days. There's
Early
9
days.
games left. Anything could happen. So baseball, the Twins, I think their magic number is 3. I'm from Minnesota, so that's very exciting. Actually playing the Tigers. I have thought about going down to see them, but it's not working in my schedule so far. I go to all the Michigan. I actually love softball. I'm a big fan of Coach Hutch, who is the winningest and longest-serving coach at the University of Michigan.
Yep.
Unlike some coaches, she's actually won multiple Big Ten championships and a national championship.
Right.
At the time, I think one of the first teams east of the Mississippi to win the softball championship.
Okay.
Baseball was very exciting last year. They went to the
great.
College World Series. Detroit Pro Sports, I have a weak relationship with. I think everyone has a weak relationship with the Lions, but I grew up in Minnesota, so
Really, that's just Matt Patricia who has a weak relationship with the Lions.
Well, they're actually doing okay, though.
They're undefeated right now,
Not
right?
to digress.
Yeah.
But,
Anyway, last question for you, and we'll wrap this thing up. Where do you see the school in 5 years? What's going to be the same? What's going to change? What do you hope to see?
Well, our physical location will definitely be different. So I hope that we are occupying our brand new and fabulous North Campus facility. I expect that the generation of faculty that were recruited, kind of starting around your time up to the present, that they will now be stepping into key leadership. I mean, many of you are in key leadership positions, but associate deanships, and so forth. We won't be a lot bigger than we are now. So our residential programs aren't going to get a lot bigger. I don't see tremendous growth in the faculty, so we won't be on that kind of trend we've been on for the last decade to accommodate the addition of 3 new degree programs. We won't be involved with that. I think a lot of the exciting synergy will be discovered at the intersection of the school and the other North Campus units. I'm particularly excited about collaborations with art and design, with engineering, and with architecture, music, theater, and dance. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting things there. I quite grasp what they are at the moment, but I think that'll be exciting. The foray into the online world, I think, will expose us to a worldwide audience. That will have consequence in terms of our reputation and visibility. I think that will help us with recruiting for the residential program. So I expect that we won't, in the early days, if someone said, "Oh, you're at the School of Information, what is that?"
Right.
And then you'd go into your 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have to do that as much in the future. I think we've laid the foundation for the long-term success of the school through our hiring, our fiduciary responsibility.
So you kind of see us moving through our teenage years, and we're going to be hitting our young adult years as kind of a newish program.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the benefit of established reputation now, and I would expect the next generation of leaders and faculty of the school to cash in on that. And it's like when I was appointed dean, the then provost, our former dean, Martha Pollack, said, you know, deans have a lot of capital at Michigan. Go out and spend it. Don't hoard that. Do something with it.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
I don't think we're not gonna change from that course.
Great. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Make sure to follow our SoundCloud and subscribe to our channel. We're also on Patreon and Venmo if you want to support our efforts. So thank you, Tom, so much for being here today, and thanks
Thank you,
everybody. You can't see them, but MNC's been running this, and they've been doing a great job. We really appreciate it.
We do appreciate
So
it.
thanks everybody for listening in.
Go Blue.